Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to yet another session of an Author's Afternoon brought to you by Prabha Khaitan Foundation in association with Sri Cements and Taj Bengal. This afternoon, our guests are Mr. Piyush Jha, and in conversation with him, Mr. Arindam Singh. A bit about our guest speaker first. Mr. Jha is a film director, screenwriter, and author. He began his career in advertising, and the creative aspect of advertising is what really interested him, which led him to directing in-house ad films at first. That journey took him on to directing a corporate ad film, and thereafter, his first feature film, Chalo America. Mr. Jha is also an author of repute, mainly in the crime and thriller genre, a favorite of mine. And he is often referred to as the Dashiell Hammett of Mumbai. In conversation with him today is Mr. Arindam Singh. He's an executive producer, filmmaker, director, as well as an actor. A man who wears many hats, and he wears them all very well. Over to you, gentlemen. But just before we start, I'd just like to tell my viewers that there will be a Q&A session after their discussion. So if you do have any questions, please press the raise your hand icon on your screens, and we will just make a note of it so we can hand it over to you after the session is over. Thank you so much and enjoy the session.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Isha. Thanks for everything. And welcome, Piyush Jha.
So glad to be here.
Yeah. It's always wonderful to be here in this Author's Afternoon, session of Author's Afternoon. And here we are having Piyush Jha Unplugged, if that's what we should have said. Okay. You are a man of who wears many hats, but we will be concentrating on your writer self mainly today. And we are focusing this book, Girls of Mumbaistan. We would be focusing on this, but definitely we would be discussing many other your writings of yours and your films as we come across. But to start off with, we'll start with this very condition in which we are right now, isn't it, Piyush? Otherwise, an author's afternoon is held within an intimate group of people who love reading books. We are together at Taj and we interact. So that is not possible. It's absolutely virtually we are on the virtual world, and this is the way we are having to lead our lives now. Would you like to start off with an opening note on this thing?
Yeah, actually, I was very looking forward to being there in Calcutta because I was supposed to be there on 17th of March, 18th of March. Yeah, and we had to cancel because the flights were closed, and the coronavirus was just coming in. Thankfully, so because a few days later there was the lockdown, and where we are right now. So
absolutely.
I really feel that I missed the opportunity to be with you all in Kolkata. I was actually looking forward to it because I really like Calcutta. I had a very lovely Calcutta experience. I'm sorry, I'm saying Calcutta because I'm used to saying Calcutta from the previous days. So don't mind, please. And I have had a very lovely experience over there in my creative sphere. I'll share that with you a little later, but I look forward to being with that city. Hopefully, after all this is over, maybe you'll invite me again.
Of course, it would be our pleasure and a pleasure for PKF to have you with us at Kolkata, definitely. Before we go into your specifics, books, your kind of writing in specifics, let us talk about this whole thing of writing in English and in Indian English that has been over these years. They have been coming up and very strongly.
Yeah.
So I would like to ask you is that, are you more comfortable in writing in English, or you write in English because you want to reach out to a bigger mass of people?
Well, I obviously have been educated with English as my medium of instruction, so I am comfortable in English. But I speak Hindi also, and well, I make films in Hindi, so I am bilingual, and as most of us are in this
No,
country.
no.
In fact, some people are trilingual. People can write and this thing, but I find it most comfortable. So it's strange, but you'll see my Hindi. I made a film in Urdu also. I mean, Khalis Urdu.
Fantastic. I mean, Piyush, I'm not trying to say that, writing in English is a taboo, but this, what I'm actually get on to is that there is a new form of Indian English that has, come up, but before that, I would like to start off by asking you that who would be your most favorite writer Indian writer who writes in English?
Well, actually, if you ask me, Amitav Ghosh is one of my favorite. And although I must say that one of his least known or least, let's say, famous novels, The Calcutta Chromosome, that's
wonderful.
It's a thriller, and it's a fantastic book, and that's one of my favorites. So yeah, he is one of the big inspirations that was there. Then Upamanyu Chatterjee was also a very big influence and kind of inspiration for me to write in English language. I used to write, like all of us have written in English in our college book, college magazines, etc. So we are used to expressing ourselves in English, and then because of the nature of the business that we get into, I mean, I was making ad films in English and Hindi, and those to be translated in 6, 8, 10 languages, right? So you're used to working multilingually. But then after a point of time, I kind of realized that there is an idiom which has emerged, the Indian English idiom. And there is a specific idiom in Mumbai or Bombay and Mumbai.
I was just coming to that. Sorry to interrupt you. I was just coming to that. That even in Girls of Mumbai Stan, while going through it, I have been seeing that the kind of words, idioms that you have used them without italics or quotes. Okay. So things like Ladla Sans, glass of chai, hanging around a tapri. And there's one interesting thing that I noticed. Mr. Ramkumar cut the line. See, normally we would say disconnect, but this is another usage which comes directly from Hindi, and such kind of usage is getting very popular. So yes, we would want to ask you about this new idiom of English language, number one. And number two, what I would like to ask you is, do you have your target readers as Indians? Indian specific readers as your target when you are writing such kind of?
Very true. I write for the Indian reader because I felt that right off the bat I should first appeal to people who are around me, and that would be my core audience. And the idiom that I chose was the Indian form of English. So I use Hindi words. In fact, I use Marathi words. And being from Mumbai, we have a mix of Marathi and Bambaiya, as you know, made famous in the Hindi films. I'm pretty fluent in that. So, I use that within my books. I use all kinds of languages. I use even South Indian, terminology, etc. within the language, depending on the character and depending on the location. Of course, most is in Bombay, but if it's a South Indian character, sometimes they use inflections. So to kind of bring the flavor of that character, I use those inflections and use the local parlance, to kind of make it richer and more relatable to my larger,
which of course would be relatable to your Indian readers
Indian.
more than your foreign readers. So that's
right.
why I was asking
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah, in fact, the name of your first novel was Mumbai Stan, right?
Yeah, Mumbai Stan. Yeah.
You have this affinity of, getting Mumbai Stan. And once again, your recent novel is Girls of Mumbai Stan. And your other novels also. Most of them deal with crimes that are city-based.
Yeah.
So, is it because you know the city very well, or because you think that city-based crimes are more complicated than rural-based crimes?
I'm from Mumbai, and I'm born and brought up, and I know the streets like the back of my hands.
Which shows in your novels like
Yes.
anything.
Yeah. Plus, what I wanted to do was actually, why did I start writing? I wanted to kind of, write a sort of a book or a story which was an ode to my city. Because I saw the changes within the city, and perhaps not all the changes were very good. So I wanted to kind of capture the essence of the city. And as a creative artist, you can only do that with all the whatever is available to you. So I used my imagination, and I used my experience as a Mumbai boy, as a Mumbaikar, to kind of capture that within the pages of my book. And I sort of try to put in Mumbai in such a way that it becomes a character. And many people have said that, it is one of the characters of the book is the city itself. And I try to capture that. And if I was living in a rural environment, I probably would have tried that. But through a quirk of fate, I'm from Mumbai, so I've captured my city and I made it, Mumbai specific. However, I must say that it is important to capture the essence of the location that you're locating your creative work in. I made a film which was in Kashmir, and I went and spent time out there, and I, captured a lot of the essence out there. And many people say that we can't make out that a non-Kashmiri man from Mumbai has made this film. So, as a creative artist, I think it's a pursuit to capture, reflect.
That's the best compliment that a creative artist can get.
Yes.
All of us who are makers, we would always love to, capture the essence of the place where we are working, the location, and it should become a character. And of course, I agree with this that Mumbai, why I'm talking to you on this so much is because Mumbai looks like a character in your writing. And I love that. While saying this, you said a sentence like that you try to capture your city in a realistic manner and with its flaws, and that comes out so well when you talk about he speaks in a typical Mumbai brusqueness. And I decided not to take him to a government hospital. He wouldn't get proper treatment there. These are the hard facts of life which we actually face in this country and in our various cities. And that's indeed great that you mix your realities with fiction.
Well, I must say, in case of the government hospital, it's rather ironic that the entire country is now dependent on government hospitals, for its the private hospitals have disappeared, from the scene. So it's quite ironic. But I was reflecting a general thought process which everyone has. Unfortunately, I think now we'll have to change the thought process with the kind of,
We take this opportunity to kind of salute the doctors and the nurses who've been putting in all their efforts to, fight this disease and, save all of us. And, yes. So now coming to your writing specific, when you write your novels, since you are a filmmaker yourself, do you keep cinema in mind?
I have a way of viewing things, and I think because of my exposure to cinema and my love for cinema, and many years of reading and viewing, simultaneously. I think it's just become that way. There is no way that I can think differently anymore. I feel, so whatever I think is quite visual, and when I capture it in words, it ends up sounding visual, and quite vivid. So it's just the way that I've become, and perhaps if I had not been a filmmaker, my writing would have had a different sense. But because of the various medium that one is dealing, kind of being exposed to, the storytelling form becomes your own, right? It becomes your own, your way of expressing. So this is my own way of expressing.
I suppose,
visual, yeah.
Actually, I suppose you cannot specifically, segregate this is cinema, this is because like the way you said that the visuals comes to you, they come to you first. It's like, which means the cinema come to you first.
Exactly.
And then you start writing. Even for me, for when I read a story, I must understand, I must see the visuals. Otherwise my cinema won't happen. So I think it's integrated for us, and no, but since you're a fantastic writer, this was an intriguing question. And so you are a specialist in thriller, of course, and like Isha introduced you, and we all know. So who are your favorite thriller writers?
Well,
across Indian, across the world, whatever.
In the past, I have kind of read people like Frederick Forsyth, James Hadley Chase when I was a little boy, and that it's going from, Sidney Sheldon, for example, Jeffrey Archer, and in the recent times there is Jo Nesbø, who is a wonderful Scandinavian film. Well, he's a rock musician and a writer and a novelist, and Gillian Flynn from the US with Gone Girl.
The Gone Girl.
Her 3-4 books are excellent, and I like people like Harlan Coben, and of course Stephen King also. His books are, which are crime fiction books, are also really good. The Outsider one, it's supernatural crime fiction. So I'm kind of always exploring, experimenting, etc. But these are some of my favorite ones, while growing up, I read Peluda. So that, because essentially then I read this very cheap dime, Indian version of the dime novel, the Pulp Fiction, Surinder Mohan Pathak and Colonel Ranjit. My mother used to kind of, order these. There was something called VPP or something. They used to get delivered home. So every month we had 5 novels, and I used to kind of read those novels. So so these are my formative kind of heroes, and grown from there, really.
And your favorite thriller filmmaker?
In India?
All across. I mean, open question.
Well, David Fincher would be one of my favorite thriller. I mean, he does so many different genres, but when he does thriller, he really...
He's incredible.
He's incredible. Christopher Nolan, and of course, the grandmaster of them all, Alfred Hitchcock.
Absolutely.
He's the basis for all, Claude Chabrol from France. So these are, the kind of...
Very recently, I was watching this, this famous book on Hitchcock, Truffaut on Hitchcock.
Truffaut on Hitchcock, yes.
So there's this documentary which has come up. It's a wonderful documentary that has been done. I'll share with you.
Please, I'd love to. Anything about Hitchcock is...
It's a lovely documentary. And, how they imbibe the book and Hitchcock's films together. The book Truffaut on Hitchcock and Hitchcock's film, they imbibe it together. And it's wonderful. It's a wonderful book.
Be a great experience.
So,
Thank you.
coming to a very plausible question from here is that it's not just about cinema. This lockdown period has fostered the growth of OTT platforms like anything.
Right.
And there is one thing which is in very particular that we notice is that a lot of thrillers, a lot of series and films which involve the dark side of human being are being made, and they are becoming very popular.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, we as humans, do we love to see the dark side of ourselves more? Or, I mean, why do we watch so much of thrillers and such kind of stuffs?
Well, to me, the essence of a crime thriller or crime fiction is talking about society's ills, the wrong things in society.
Absolutely.
That's what we talk about. Essentially, we are very as a crime filmmaker or a crime thriller writer or a crime fiction, detective fiction writer, you are talking about things which have gone wrong within society, within the lives of people, and how they can be corrected, right? Obviously, the ills of society is the obsession of every crime fiction and crime thriller writer, always looking to kind of, bring that out and provide a sense of catharsis to the reader. When I started my first book, it was like not many people were writing crime in India at that time.
You're talking about Mumbai Stan.
Mumbai Stan. And I met, somebody who's quite a leading light in the literary circles. And I said, I'm writing a crime thriller. So the crime thriller in India, crime fiction in India, really, in India, nothing gets solved. Nobody gets justice. So I realized that the key there is to get that justice, either by hook or by crook, by within the law or outside the law. The essence of it is that you kind of provide justice, because most people in our society don't get justice in our lives. So within the pages of my novel, they find the catharsis, that they cannot find in real life. And that's what I think most crime fiction writers are doing around the world, providing the sense of catharsis to people in their daily lives.
That's a lovely way of looking at it. Yes, of course. Coming to your Girls of Mumbai Stan, it's actually 3 novellas.
3 novellas, yeah.
And the first of it, and even the second one, they have women protagonists.
Yeah.
Normally, in cinema, and also while we tend to have more of male protagonists.
Yes.
That's I feel very sad. I mean, why we don't work more on female protagonists. And did you have any kind of trepidation, any fear that this won't be, or the way we have female protagonists in various parts of the world, it's not so popular in this country?
True, it's not popular in this country, and perhaps it's because of the society that we have. And maybe I have been also a part of, kind of responsible in that sense to not look into it previously. I was not aware of it. And I felt that, because many of my, if you read my other novels, you will find that my first 3 novels were very male-oriented. And it's only in my 4th novel, that is Rakshas, India's #1 serial killer, I, had a female, like, semi-protagonist or antagonist, depending on how you look at it. And then I started really getting interested in exploring this further. So my next novel, it took a little bit of time for me to kind of arrive at what I really wanted to do. But I really wanted to go back and, kind of understand how certain things affect women in our country, and how people take advantage and how they can be deceived, and how can they get themselves out of that deception, the web of this deception. So that's something which I began to explore and the result is Girls of Mumbaistan. And as you know that I have not stopped only at women. I have also in the third novella, I have a transgender who's the
Coming to that, yes, that's wonderful.
Ask the question. Yeah.
Hijra inspector.
Yeah.
And that is very unique. Yeah, let's hear something about that too.
So I was doing research, and I always wanted to write something about the transgender community, and specifically the Hijra community. I've grown up in Mumbai, so I've grown up with the Hijra community as a part of our daily lives around us. And I always wanted to kind of reflect something about their lives, but I didn't know what to do, because I most of the time I read whatever I read was about how they have to face atrocities, etc., which is absolutely true. But then to me, it was important to understand, where do we go from here? Given that they have to face atrocities, how can we rise above this, and how can my protagonist rise above this? And then I started seeing that there are now the Hijra community and the transgender community has been accepted as legally accepted in various government jobs. And I started exploring that, and I found that there are two police persons from the transgender community who have been absorbed in the police service, one in Rajasthan and one in Chennai. As yet, Mumbai does not have one. So I decided to write the imagined or the fictional story of Mumbai's first transgender police officer. And that's what I have, Inspector Rani Kumar.
Yes. And I suppose that is under discussion for a ensuing series, right?
Series, yes. A series which the character will lead.
Actually, let me tell you very frankly, while reading this book, I was thinking that this would be a wonderful series. And I was on the verge of asking you that, are the rights available?
Definitely, let's talk.
We'll do that.
Not offline.
But you know what's the best part of your writing is that they're very cinematic.
Yes.
That's probably when that filmmaker self of yours and the writer self of yours are combined, and they're trying to create something. Yeah. It helps when you're writing. It helps you to create those cinematic. I could see every frame in your book, the way they have been so vividly, written. Yeah. So maybe when you are also making the cinema, when you're writing the script for your cinema, then that writer self of yours helps a lot. So it
is true. But I have evolved to this, because if I look at when I wrote my first screenplay, Chalo America, and I was directing it, and I'm the writer and I'm the director. After I finished my writing process and I wear my director's hat and I'm on the sets, sometimes when I used to look at the screenplay, I used to say, I can't do this. I mean, this doesn't work.
It may be so bookish. It may be, yeah.
And then I realized my own mistakes, and I realized that from there I started evolving, So
we don't evolve it that way. I mean, that's very true. Correct. So let's hear something interesting from you. This is some question this is a question which is thrown at me also many a times, because we are thriller makers. Is that what has been your brush with crime?
With crime. I've said this a couple of times, so I'll say this again. I grew up in the 80s, and in the 80s, there was the Mumbai crime was rife with gangsterism. And we all know all the films which have come from Mumbai crime. But so there was a person who is known as Bada Rajan. You know of Chota Rajan, right? Okay. Chota Rajan is named after Bada Rajan died. Okay. So that Bada Rajan, I saw him being killed in front of my eyes. You can check it out. There's a person I was in a college called Elphinstone College.
Elfie of
in the book.
it comes in your book.
In the book, exactly. So I was here we have something called first year junior college, which is the 11th standard, and you're already in college. That right? It's not like you do your 12th in school and then you go to your graduation. You are already a college student as soon as you finish your 10th. So I was in first year junior college. I was 15 years old, and in front of my eyes, Elphinstone College is right next to something called the Sessions Court in Mumbai. And Bada Rajan, he was called Rajan Nair, that's his actual name, was brought there for a hearing. And at that point, this person called David Pardesi, he dressed up as a naval sailor. So in that area, that whole area, you have the docks, and you have many shops over there which sell naval uniforms, and they sell it to anybody. Like I could go and buy a naval uniform. So he went and bought a naval uniform, and he came into the court area dressed as a naval sailor. So nobody paid attention to him because there were many naval and army people in that area. There's a general docks and navy area. So he came in out there and he shot Rajan point blank in the court premises. Okay. And the court is about 150 meters from the college entrance. And we were standing at the college entrance as we were like young kids always hanging around. And we heard the gunshot and we looked that side and we saw this naval guy trying to jump from the window of the first floor.
Okay.
And we saw policemen grabbing him and pulling him. And then the policemen came and started clearing that area, and they pushed us inside the canteen and they kind of locked us up. And then, in another hour or so, we came to know that this had happened, and all of us were shaken as kids. So I think that to me was one of those things which embedded itself in my psyche to see somebody, being shot right next to you.
I too have a similar experience, almost like that, because we've seen the Naxal movement out here in Kolkata. Yeah. Why I asked you specifically this question is, there are descriptions. I really do not want to discuss this book too much because it's a thriller, and I think everybody who's hearing us would understand. But I'll tell you, there is this thing about this lady going over to collect some money, which has been, and this building which has been described. And I have been to that place. I've been to Haji Ali and to those places, and I could actually see that what you were talking about. So you were talking about private lockers inside a shabby building.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it just came out of your mind, or you would have known about them?
Well, I've heard many rumors about this, not that I've been there. But when you are in, I must tell you one thing, that I was also a student political leader in Mumbai. I was the general secretary of the Mumbai University. So
which party?
I was in NSUI, National Students Union of India, okay, which is Congress Party. But I left, so I'm apolitical. Because of that, I campaigned across Bombay University. We're extended from, in those days, and even now in certain ways, from Nasik, from Nasik almost to the Goa border. The university extends out there. So I had to campaign in all these areas, and all the city colleges. As a result, I met students and people from various walks of life, various colleges, various, sensibilities, various, let's say, financial and economic backgrounds, etc. I remember that area I know very well because there was one one student leader from that area who was from Kamatipura, the brothel, the red light area of Mumbai, and we had to go to his house. And I went to his house, and he said, my uncle has just come back after a long time, and so you have biryani. So I'm eating biryani in his house. So I said, Acha, where did your uncle come from? Where had he gone? He had gone abroad or something? He'd gone to jail. And I said, what does your uncle do? The uncle was a pimp. you know. So I've met people like that, and these guys have grown up now. Some have become nefarious people. Somebody have become MLAs. Some have become auto rickshaw drivers. Some people have become policemen. So I meet them, you know, when I go to various parts of the city. I keep meeting them. And so my knowledge of the streets, of the lingo, of what's going on, and they keep sharing things with me because they know I'm a creative person and I don't have any, you know, I need to threaten them with.
Would you kind of call yourself a person who would love to be there on the streets, mingling with people to get your stuffs to write?
I'm always there. I mean, it's not that I would like to be there. I do that. I mean, I'm always on the streets. I go, I walk, you know, among people around, you know, all kinds of parts of the city, and travel by train and local train, second class, go to all the teeming areas, which now, of course, is seeming like a very distant dream. But, you know, so I really don't do any research. I just kind of let it all seep in, you know. Yeah.
I was just coming to that how long do you take to write a book and what kind of research do you do? But you actually answered this, that it is so very important that as a writer or as a filmmaker, you have to stay connected to the roots.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, you have to be there. Otherwise, you lose all contacts.
Yeah.
You know, then you have a mind of your own. Isn't it?
In fact, I kind of know the streets so well that at one point of time, before Google Maps and all these things started, people used to call me and ask me directions, you know, I have to go to this place. How do I go there? And I would tell them, take left, take right, go here. You know, so it would be, I would be their MapQuest or Google Maps for them. So and tell them also, okay, here you might find this problem and etc. and advise them. And, you know, kind of, it just stayed with me. I said, I want to kind of write where my books. In fact, one of the funniest comments that I saw after I wrote Mumbaistan was, Piyush Jha is the new Raju guide of Mumbai. So I thought that was a funny and apt way of describing me and my book and my writing about Mumbai.
Sorry, I must say sorry. There was an incoming call which got connected to my laptop too. I'm very sorry. Yes, but that's lovely to hear. I want to hear something about Virkar, that you're a character which you have created, and so very Mumbaiish.
Yeah. So you know, there is so since the time that I grew up here, as I grew up in Mumbai and experienced it from a perspective of a child to the perspective of a teenager to an adult. I saw all the changes, and you know, in the past 10 or 15 years, the changes have been very rampant, and I felt that the culture of Mumbai or the fabric of Mumbai really changed, you know, in these 10, 15 years. Perhaps I would say maybe after the bomb blasts and the riots of 92, it started changing, and then now the change is pretty complete. So I wanted to reflect that within my book. So I thought of a character who has grown up in Mumbai and has a Mumbai English-speaking culture, which is very common. That even people from the so-called deprived sections of society can speak fluent English because they've been to English schools, English medium schools, and so he is somebody who's a Koli. That is a Koli is a community, fisherman community from Mumbai, the original inhabitants of Mumbai, and he's grown up in a place called Machimar Nagar, which is in Kolaba near Kaf Parade. In fact, that's the place where those the terrorists from the 26/11 they landed over there. That Machimar Nagar, their boats came there. So he's grown up in that place, and he kind of has studied in a English medium school, and therefore is a Mumbai boy. And then when he gets into the police, he is sent off to this police training college in Nasik, where there are all parochial, other elements and all in play. And he becomes the kind of a victim of a reverse, bias. English speaking, we'll show you, kind of thing. Okay. So he is posted out to a small town, hamlet in the rural areas called Gadchiroli in Maharashtra, which is very Naxalite and Maoist influenced and dominated. It's a punishment posting for police people. So he's posted over there. And then he spends 15 years out there, wins gallantry awards, and then he's posted back to his hometown, which is Mumbai. And I catch him in this place when he's back. So his whole, now he's at a sort of a, crossroads, and no, he doesn't recognize the city he grew up in. He's sort of
different place, yeah.
Yeah, so he's trying to always reconcile himself with the Mumbai that he sees in front of him and the Mumbai he grew up in. And that to me is the conflict within my books, the old versus the new, always conflicting together and clashing to kind of create, the ill or the society's issues which are there in our city. And that's what is reflected within my character.
Virkar is this whole series of Virkar is coming out on an OTT platform. I suppose shooting and all are over.
Yeah. So my 3 books, that is Anti-Social Network, Compass Box Killer, and a novella from Mumbai Stan called Injection Wala. They are being made into 3 seasons of Virkar. So the first season has already been shot and it's being edited right now. It stars Pratik Babbar as Inspector Virkar, and sometime this year it should be on
the OTT platforms eating up all the space and time of ours, and the people are actually looking forward to new series, and I really wish you all the very best.
Thank you very much.
What about you have any film in mind for your upcoming venture?
I actually had a couple of things that I was working on, but now with this new scenario, I've junked all that stuff, because I think this has been a kind of a life-changing moment for all of us, and many things that we thought of just 2 months back, are not going to be there, after 3 months. Things are going to change, So I don't want to go back to an old sort of thinking. I'm trying to think of what is going to be the future, and I'm going to write something which I will make. I want to make as a film, which will capture the new world that we will come into in the next.
There's absolutely going to be a new normal, definitely. I mean,
yeah.
Kind of. So we'll have to all adjust. And
the fact that we are doing this over video is the new normal now, right? Doing it.
As I was speaking to you, see this author's afternoon session is such a lovely, warm session that's held in this room at Taj Bengal, and then after the session, the writer signs books for everybody who attends the program. I mean, we are going to miss all that. That's really sad. But this is, of course, there is another format. Coming to 2 of your other books, which had some lovely names, they've been satirical, of course, the Great Indian Bowel Movement and the Yiddish Nationalists. Did you write satires just on a...
Well, I started my career writing satire. Chalo America is a satire about young kids who dream about America and can never see what is in front of them in India. And King of Bollywood is a satire about how Bollywood has become all pervasive and in our society and become the be all and the end all of it. Unfortunately, I feel that satire does not get very well accepted within the Indian sense of humor. Irony is
that
very
humor, that British humor, which that
irony is quite lost in India. Of course, there have been very good satirical pieces in Indian literature also, Rag Darbari, etc. But I felt that I should write. My roots are in satire, so I should kind of write some. So I experimented, and I'm writing this series of 3 novellas on the 3 humors, and basically, let's say It's basically about the three things that Indians do in public without understanding, well, it is defecating, urinating, and spitting. So my first one is the Great Indian Bowel Movement, and the second one is the Urine Nationalist, and the third one is, well, it's going to come out. There's People versus the Spitting Swami. That's coming out soon.
The first book, the Great Indian Bowel Movement, of course, reminds me of a film of one of my very dear friends, Shujit Sarkar.
Yeah. Piku, yeah. But mine is different. Mine is they start using open defecation as a form of civil disobedience. Instead of protesting, they openly defecate. So that is the movement. It's a movement, and that is why it's called the Great Indian Bowel Movement, because it's about people opening up their bowels in public and protesting. You should read that.
Yeah, we must read that. I think we are nearing the end of the session, and I can see that there are a lot of people waiting to put some questions they want to ask you, they want to interact with you. I would ask the last question for this session, and it was really wonderful, Piyush, and we'll keep up this lovely. The only question, the last question I would want to ask you, I can see Isha already coming, but the last question is, since we are having this session from Kolkata, do you have a Kolkata connect?
I actually have a beautiful Kolkata story, which I tell a lot of people, whoever I meet from Kolkata. So I think it's a perfect place for me to talk about it. Well, my first film was a film called Chalo America, and it was, invited to be screened at the Calcutta Film Festival, International Film Festival at Nandan, and Mr. Anshu Soor was the director of the festival, and I was invited, and I came there as a young boy who had just made his first film in 35 lakhs, financed by NFDC. I had no clue about film people, etc. I didn't know anyone. And my poster was put up out there, and I was in the Nandan complex, and I saw a gentleman dressed in dhoti and kurta who was staring at the poster. So I went and spoke to him, and I said, "Sir, I'm the director. Can I answer some question?" I was very excited, my first film, So I said, so he said, no, I can get it. I said, you please come. The screening is in the evening. He said, see, I don't know. I'll be busy. Maybe I'll see. I said, no, you please come. I request you. So he said, okay, I'll see. So the screening happened, and Q&A. I saw the gentleman. He had seen the film, and I saw him in the white kurta, and he went. And then in the evening, I went for a reception, a kind of a dinner which was there, and in that dinner the gentleman was there again, and he was that time surrounded by so many people, and I
think I know whom you are talking about, but I won't give it out.
Yeah. So then I looked at him, and he saw me, and he said, come here. So I went out. They said, very nice film. I enjoyed myself. I really had fun. I said, thank you very much. And I went. Then I asked somebody, who's that gentleman? I saw people around him. He said, he is Mr. Buddhadev Bhattacharya. At that time, he was the INB minister of Calcutta. I said, of West Bengal. Yeah. I said, but he was just like, I just saw him, standing outside looking at my poster like a normal, just a normal everyday person. So that's how it is, So it was quite a story for me to know. And of course, later on,
yes, he used to be one of the pillars behind the Kolkata International Film Festival. Yeah. And let me give this out to you, that he used to religiously watch every film that was screened in Kolkata International Film Festival during his time as a chief minister. Yes. So that was a wonderful session, Piyush. Lovely interacting with you. And I really wish that we could have carried this on, but we have our, Isha is waiting. And over to Isha to take questions for Piyush.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi. While we're waiting for questions, that was really an interesting session, I have to say. And like I started out saying, crime and thriller is one of my favorite genres. So before the others ask, I had a quick question. What made you choose this genre? Because, from what I know, like if you're a reader of crime and thriller novels, it's not the easiest genre to pick as a writer. I mean, to sustain interest till the climax or anticlimax as it may be, you know, and there has to be a certain pace to the novel. So what made you choose this genre above, like you could have written on anything, like you started with satire?
Well, you know, like that's the question is answered by you in the sense that it's something which I like to read, my own genre, my favorite genre itself. So I want to write books that I'd like to read, you know, and I like to write crime. I like to read crime. I like to read satire, comedy, etc. So I started making comedy films, and you know, and I used to like crime fiction as a reader. So I just wanted to, you know, go to the genre that interests me the most, and I write in the way that I would like to have read books, you know. So I, you know, a certain pace, a certain way of describing things, etc. So it comes from the interest that I have in life, you know. That's the space that I'd like to be in.
Question, Sesha? I think she's having problems with connection.
Okay, yeah. I think there's a question. I'll just check it out. It's in the chat box. Just a second.
I must say that you have this thing about, you know, getting into almost climax and then coming up with another anticlimax. While she comes up with a question, I wanted to make this observation, which is very typical in your writing.
Yeah, well, the double twist, you know, I kind of...
Yeah, the double twist.
I'm not being able to access the question.
Yeah. I try my best to kind of keep it going and keep it going.
So I think Aisha is having problem in getting the questions.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a question. The question's not coming on my chat box.
So is there anybody else out here, Anindita or Manisha, who can?
Yes, Aisha, Mr.
I
Jha,
can't get the chat. I haven't got the question on my chat box.
Okay.
Aisha, there's a question coming up from Manisha.
Yeah, can you just ask it?
Yeah. And just the question in the chat box is, if you get stuck in any story, then how do you overcome it?
Oh, that's a tough question. I must say that sometimes you do get stuck, and sometimes you know, you just, like right now I am stuck. I'm working on something.
Come now. Yeah.
I'm working on something, and I have been stuck at one position for the past 3 or 4 days, and I'm not been able to come up with the solution. You just have to keep trying and trying and trying. You know, it's you got to look at it from a point of view of a cliff, the Mount Everest, you know, that you have to climb, and you have to get to that summit, you know, and you can't give up. And so if you fall down, you have to get up and go again. And the only way to get through writer's block is to get through it, you know, keep at it. That's the only way. Sometimes you just take a little break, drink tea, watch something else, fight with somebody, talk to somebody, go out for a walk, which you can't do nowadays, but, you know, kind of take your mind off things. But ultimately, it's all, the blank page is always going to come and stare you in the face, you know, so you're really not going to find any way but to make yourself do it.
Isha,
there is one more question.
But would you kindly...
Isha, tell me.
Would you kindly request the attendees to kindly give their names when they are giving out the question? Because most of the questions...
I'll just ask the question and I'll try to get a name. The next question is, what is your inspiration?
Life is my inspiration, you know, and people ask me, where do you get your stories from? The simple answer is, I get it from the newspapers, you know, and what I see around me. So I meet people, I interact with people. As I mentioned, I roam around in the city, various places, just meet people and talk to them. You know, the fascinating stories and ideas will come to you just by walking in the streets and talking to people and reading the newspapers. Every day, there are at least 5 great ideas that you can pick up from a newspaper and spin into a story. You might not end up doing it, but their ideas are there. All you have to do is look.
Exactly.
So basically, thematically, your books, the content have very real situations.
Yes, they have very real situation, and then I use the real situation and I use them as a springboard for my creative, pursuits. So I don't kind of start describing real situations. I, leap from there and into the fictional world, but keep that as a base for the creative, explorations that I have.
Isha, there's another question from Lolita Dev. Can you see that?
It's not come up on my Q&A.
Okay,
Just
so
a
should I
second.
read the question out?
Yes, please do.
Okay. Considering the fact that we are living in the era of the internet and watching films that are live streamed on various platforms, how do you encourage our younger student community to read more crime fiction and eventually propel them to be upcoming writers themselves? Please share your experiences on how you conceive a crime fiction plot.
But there are lots of questions over there. But
It's not just one question. Yeah.
But I'll start answering that. So the only way that you can, I find that fiction is a good way of getting people interested in reading. See, fiction was actually entertainment, right? It is entertainment. People didn't have movies before when the stories came about, and that's how we used to entertain people, through first oral storytelling and then written storytelling and then visual storytelling. So the written form, of course, is the basis for our thoughts, our abstract thoughts, our vocabulary, our ability to express ourselves is through the written word. So I would always tell this, and I've done it many times because I speak to a lot of students. I kind of go to lots of institutions, etc., and speak about it. Also, I write a column in the Hindustan Times where I talk about reading, etc. And what I want to say to you is that it's the base, and I feel fiction is the reading base. If you read fiction, you become a better human being, a better problem solver, a better you have better understanding of human nature. And if you have a better understanding of human nature, you can be a better manager, salesperson, engineer, whatever you have. Unfortunately, in India, what has happened is that the education process is now looked at only as a way of making economic progress. So everybody's being pushed to become doctors, engineers, etc., etc. The humanities are being ignored, and humanities actually make you a better person and use that information that you gather through your engineering, etc., to better purposes. If you are more, you're exposed to the humanities. For example, let me say that Harvard University and the Harvard managerial program, management school, has started fiction as a part of their curriculum. Even Stanford has started prescribing fiction as a part of the curriculum to make better managers, because they believe fiction helps you create problem solving and understand problem solving much better. So I say fiction is the basis for all progress, and that's my understanding of it. The last part of the question is that, can you repeat that?
Yes, please share your experiences on how you conceive a crime fiction plot. You said that you get your things from people around, from life around.
From around and life and things, cases which are in the newspaper, and then use that as a springboard. There's a lot of it out there. Wealth of
There's another question from Anamika Ghosh. She's asking, would you like to write anything other than crime thrillers? Have you ever thought of writing anything other than?
Yes, well, we discussed that I wrote satirical pieces and I made satirical films as well as stories, and I'm working on a book. So yes, satire is definitely the other one. I have thought of writing romances and pure romances, but you can't. I don't think I can write a pure romance. However, I must tell you that many of my stories and most of my books are actually love stories. You'll find there is the root of all evil is in the relationship, and if you actually read my books from a perspective of the fact that you're reading a love story, you will find there's a tremendous amount of romance out there, except it's not the way expressed in a way that it would perhaps be done in a romance novel. So yeah, I do explore different genres. Maybe I'll just explore others. I want to explore horror, one genre which I like a lot. Unfortunately, I've not done it as yet. Perhaps I'll do it in my next one.
One more question. Are you a spontaneous writer, or do you know the end of your story from the start?
Well, yes, I do like to, yeah, what you're asking is there are two kinds of writers. They're called, pantsers, and who write from the seat of their pants, and people who do an outline. So I am a person who does an outline. I kind of work out each element of my plot, and I know my ending very clearly before I actually start writing. You know, I frame out, it's called a step outline. I do a step outline for my stories, and I'm very clear as to where I'm going. And then somewhere I do make changes and modification and tweaks, etc. But I like to know where I'm going, because I think that I'll get there faster, or I'll be clearer in my process. But that's just my way. I mean, there are lots of other writers who write in a different form, and they just start writing and they reach somewhere, and you know, they're really good writers. I don't think I am that. I like to be, you know, have everything in place and then start writing.
Okay, one more question from Joita Bose. How important is research to your work?
So, like I was mentioning earlier to Arindam Saab, that since I'm writing crime fiction, most of the research has already been done, because you know, it's through my life. My research is my life. You know, the life I've led, and the people I know, and so I really don't need to get into, you know, specific forms of research as such. I do kind of do a check back with certain experts on to, you know, like whether, you know, certain things like police procedural things, you know, diary entry, what's the rank, one rank below, etc. That little bit of research. But otherwise, the research is already done by the life that I've led.
And how do you choose your actors to mirror your words? I'm guessing that's from your filmmaking perspective.
Yeah.
How do you choose the actors?
That's an interesting question, because you know, many people would like to cast certain actors, and then you can't, you know,
Get them.
Can't make them, you know, a part of your journey because of various reasons. So one should never think of the actor while one is creating or writing the screenplay. I write the screenplay and I imagine my film without a particular person. I imagine it, the film with the character, and then I meet with actors and try to imagine them, whether they fall into the you know, the world that I have imagined, whether they'll be able to relate that well. And sometimes it happens well, sometimes it doesn't happen well. You know, it's a pull and push. You know, it's a commercial medium, so sometimes you have to accept certain situations and go with somebody whom you didn't want, but you know, situation sort of brought you to that situation, and try to make the best possible within that scenario. And that's the honest truth, because any filmmaker who tells you I want that person and he comes to me, that's not possible. I mean, even filmmakers like Raju Hirani have to struggle to get actors there, the right actors for their films, you know. Yeah.
Anamika Ghosh is asking, could you suggest some books for us in this lockdown? Some interesting read.
It depends on the genre that you like to read. There are lots of books out there, but I would say, instead of reading, why don't you write your experiences? I mean, one of the columns that I wrote was about writing a lockdown diary. You know, like I wrote it right at the beginning of the lockdown, that maybe we will see, very good texts coming out from this period with people who are writing about their own experiences. For example, the diary of Anne Frank or My Plague Years by these are examples of people of writing which has happened during such a time that we are going through. I think it's one of the best form of literature that has come out from experiencing a scenario that such as we are right now. So I would say that try writing instead of reading. I mean, you can read anything you feel like. There's tons of books available, etc., for you to read. But why don't you read the diary of Anne Frank and perhaps get inspired and do your own bit of writing?
There's one more. Shona is asking, how long does it take for you to write a book? Which one took the minimum and which one took the maximum time?
The minimum was the first book because I wrote it during a period, 2 months period, because I was working on a film script and with an actor, and I had never written a novel before that, and I was working on this script with an and the actor wanted to discuss it, and then he went off to shoot a film in London in the UK for about 2 months and said, I'll get back and then we'll discuss it. So for 2 months I had nothing to do but wait for that person to come back. So I started writing something. Then I said, no, I won't write another screenplay, just divert my attention, So I said, let me try my hand at long form, and I started writing a short story, and that short story became a novella. And then my wife said, this is pretty okay, it's pretty good, why don't you write some more? So I wrote 2 more, and then she said, why, this is something which you can probably send to publishers. So I sent it out to 3 publishers, and I got a immediate 15 days, in 15 days I got a publishing deal for 3 books. So then I was suddenly, a writer. And I said, my God, now I have to write 2 more books.
So it's like your wife reads your first scripts and drafts?
Yes. My wife is I write, so people write for different people, right? Somebody writes for their friends, somebody writes for their peers, etc. I write for my wife. Okay. So I write and then I show it to my wife. And if she likes it, it's well and good. If she doesn't like it, we have a fight. And the next day I rewrite.
Actually, this goes to my wife Priyanka for pushing me through the tough days.
Yeah.
That's
all my books are dedicated to my wife because she's been the inspiration.
That's wonderful.
We'll just take this last question. I'll just read it out.
Yeah.
Your take on realistic films being defined by unnecessary sexual imagery in present times?
Well, I think it's not a bad thing to have an element of sexual expression within a film. That's a normal thing for human beings and our lives. For many years, I think we have been repressed as a society, and what is being expressed now is what real life is. So if there is a certain sense of sexual exploration or use of abusive language, it's real life. People use abusive language in real life. And
I think if it's aesthetically done, it's fine.
Yes, and it's a form of expression. I mean, in our life, we do talk about sex, we do wonder about sex. We do have sex. So it's all right, to have it in films also. It's part of life.
Right.
So,
it's a natural phenomenon. It's part of life. I mean, why do we have to segregate and look at it?
Exactly.
So I think, Isha, it's time to round
Yes.
up the session.
Thank you so much, both of you. I think that was an excellent session. I'm sure everybody enjoyed it. Thank you, Mr. Jha. And we really regret not being able to host you in Kolkata, but this was just as good.
I really
and thank you, Arindam, as always. And a big thank you to all our viewers as well. Please join us again for the next session. Thank you to our sponsors, of course, the Prabha Khaitan Foundation for bringing this to us, as well as Shree Cements Limited and Taj Bengal. Thank you. Stay
Thank
safe.
you. Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much, Anandita, Arindamji, and Isha. Thank you very much. And thank you
Thank
to
you.
Prabha Khaitan Foundation. And thank you, Kolkata. Stay safe.